This edition of WOW or Women of Worth is brought to you by the Shirin Fozdar program of the Singapore Management University. Tonight we hear from two feminist heroes.
But we had many men criticizing us. Also women were against us, not all, but those who were secondary wives. They were afraid that if there was monogamous marriage law, then they would be thrown in the streets.
She took an overnight bus to see me in Bangkok with 2 cushions to tell me, buy these 2 cushions, it will help a girl.
I'm Michelle Martin, and welcome to the second edition of a 6-part special on women in Singapore then and now. Tonight, we learn more of the late social activist Mrs. Shirin Fozdar and how her work continues today. Last week, we heard the voice of the late Mrs. Shirin Fozdar, a pioneering figure for the advancement of women's rights in early Singapore. She spoke of the aims of the National Council of Women of 1975.
The objectives were to see that women got equal rights in every respect of marriage and divorce, inheritance, equal pay for equal work, equal facility for education and entering our profession.
She spoke of how she worked towards making monogamy, or her trademark phrase of one man, one wife, a reality in Singapore of the 1950s, where polygamy was commonplace.
One man had married 67 times and went on divorcing, and the ground for divorce was that the wife had asked him where he was at night and why he had come home late.
And we learned of her role in lobbying political parties to include in law the ideals that would become the Women's Charter of 1961.
And so I encouraged the women of Singapore to vote for whatever party they thought was going to help the cause of women.
Born in 1905 in Bombay, India, Shirin Fozdar died from cancer in 1992. But tonight we find out how her legacy continues through the work of the Independent Charitable Trust Fund initiated by the Association of Women for Action and Research in conversation with Claire Chiang, the chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program. We hear the late Shirin Fozdar's voice thanks to the Oral History Centre of the National Archives of Singapore. You can hear more at www.nas.gov.sg/archives-online. Welcome to the program. I'm Michelle Martin. Claire Chiang, who met Fozdar in person, recalls her memories of Shirin Fozdar.
For a long time when Shirin was working in the northern part of Thailand at Yasathon, which is the impoverished part of the Korat, she was combating trafficking, prostitution, and trying to help women stay be on their own by doing these triangular cushions.
Later, we will hear more from Claire Chiang, herself a multifaceted social activist, author, former academic, and nominated Member of Parliament, speak of her own personal lessons on marriage, motherhood, women and decision-making. We'll also take a look at 2015 from her perspective as chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program. But first, what most concerned Shirin Fozdar of the lives of women when she came to Singapore with a husband in 1950 to spread the Baha'i faith? It was polygamy and the lack of protections she saw women had when it came to marriage and easy divorce. Here, she talks about how illiteracy allowed women to be duped into marriage without legal protection in Singapore in the 1950s.
And some of these women were so ignorant, men would sometimes fool her by having the greeting card and showing her as if this was the marriage registration, you see. And these girls used to be taken in and think that they were legally married.
Although born into a wealthy family herself, Shirin Fozdar displayed an empathy for what all women need: security of a place within a marriage and a home, securities that before the Women's Charter in 1961 were not available to women here.
Because a woman can be thrown out of her house anytime. The husband can divorce her without any rhyme or reason. In such a society where women all the time had to worry about the security of her marriage and her home, how could she have the heart and the time to train her children in the right manner? A woman needs to have peace of mind and feel that her home is her home, that she will not be driven out of it.
As Honorary Secretary of the Singapore Council of Women, Shirin Fozdar, through lectures, talks on radio, and letter writing, campaigned actively against polygamy, writing to prominent community leaders and government officials in Singapore and to the Colonial Affairs Office in London to fight for monogamous marriage laws. But it was a fight that Shirin Fozdar remembers stirred opposition from all corners of society and from the very women she was standing up for.
Many such bad practices were going on, and so we were trying to fight against these customs. But we had many men criticizing us. Also, women were against us, not all, but those who were secondary wives. They were afraid that if there was monogamous marriage law, then they would be thrown in the streets and would have no protection. And therefore they were opposed. So it was a very tough fight for us, and carried on with our talk on the radio. And
it was a fight that paid off when the Women's Charter was passed in 1961, effectively outlawing polygamy and providing fundamental rights for women. In 1961, Fozdar moved to Thailand to help destitute women and young girls with a school that she helped build in the Ubon province. Chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program, Claire Chiang, tells me more about the personal link between Mrs. Fozdar and herself in the next part of this special edition of Wow, a Women of Worth.
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
Welcome to Wow, a Women of Worth. I'm Michelle Martin. Today, a very special edition of Wow, brought to you by the Shirin Fozdar program of the Singapore Management University. We heard from the late Mrs. Shirin Fozdar in the first part of this program. The Shirin Fozdar program is an independent charitable trust fund initiated by the Association of Women for Action and Research. It is a commemoration of Mrs. Shirin Fozdar, an outstanding Singaporean woman who contributed vitally to the cause of women's rights here in Singapore. In this part of the program, we learn how the meeting of Mrs. Shirin Fozdar and Claire Chiang prompted a real change in the life of Miss Chiang. She moved from academia. You might have heard the trailers that we've been playing here on 938 Live about how Mrs. Fozdar met Miss Chiang with 2 pillows, and those Thai pillows made by women within the community, she said, would change some lives, and that prompted a rethinking on the part of Miss Chiang about how she could affect change by purchasing more than just 2 of those pillows. We continue with Wow on 938 Live, this time hearing from Claire Chiang.
I left university. I started to look all around at communities, women who are weaving, doing porcelain work, doing fabric weaving and wood carpentry, anything that women's craft work excels in. And lo and behold, I thought I would start with one shop, but now I'm running about nearly 80 within our group. But that actually brought me to the understanding of work being a very dignifying engagement.
Yes.
Whether it's in the village or whether it is at home or whether it is a cleaning job, etc. Work in itself is an engagement which I feel is uplifting. So honoring all aspects of work, honoring women's effort or honoring the human effort, it's something that I feel young people and people today need to reconsider. To remember the effort of our elders and the pioneers who have brought this nation to where it is. So in remembering Shirin Fozdar for all her effort in India and across Southeast Asia and of course in Singapore, when we started up this trust fund, which was an initiative by AWARE in early days, it was really giving respect to that spirit. And that spirit continues, is sustained through all ages. And in a way, I feel that, her spirit lives through all the efforts that Kirpal Singh, the Wikimedia Center, the students, the faculty, and AWARE and all the other women's organizations are still carrying on the legacy. It's so important to sustain that. Young people are not interested. I just walked out of a session this morning with it's a Samsung initiative to look at the use of technology. And it was uplifting for me to see what I had used to think about digital divide, digital alienation, isolation, all the negative impact of technology. Today, I heard 6 teams of young people leveraging technology to create solutions for the elderly, for children, for the disadvantaged, etc.
Using technology to break down those barriers.
How to create social cultural bridges, not barriers.
Yes. Yeah.
So in a way, I think Shirin Fozdar was giving us all the legacies and teaching us how to build bridges.
Can you give us some insight into how the Shirin Fozdar program is continuing her work, and particularly for 2015, perhaps?
When we started with Shirin Fozdar, we were doing a lot of fundraising and getting enough money, and we dispersed it to different NGOs. And when we decided to institutionalize this legacy so that any of us could step away, this continues, this spirit continues. And that's why we park it with Wikimedia Center, so that the faculty and the students will carry on the work should we elders disappear from scene. So it itself is sustainable. SFP has now designed annually about 4 to 5 workshops a year. Idea was to reach out to young leaders, to women, men, the community at large, in collaboration with faculty, to promote women empowerment. Mm-hmm. So for the first 5 years, when we institutionalized it at Wikimedia Center, we started a series called the Women in Community series, where we invited women from all walks of life and internationally to share. I think the narrative styles of women is a clear methodology that is very empowering, and that's uniquely women. You can't see a group of men talking the way a group of men do. And I feel that narrative style, the sharing of stories, of mutually empowering one another, it's a tremendous methodology, because it doesn't just engage the mind. It really engages the spirit and it hits the soul. And you walk away really finding that God is in you. 2015, we're going to launch the new series called Women Shaping the Future of Cities.
Oh, that's exciting.
Why are cities the way they are? Why is the land use, the housing policy, the way schools are being run, the way leisure space are being allocated, why are they the way they are? How can we reshape it to humanize the cityscape so that it allows more connectivity, allows more empowerment of all ages and encourages diversity and inclusiveness? So it is really questioning the way things are, and if there is a woman's perspective to all this, from urban planning to planning the way we work, the way we play, and the way we relate, and the way we care. Can I not have a child learning center right smack at the city center of Shenton Way when I am working, so that I could work, park my child or my elder there, and then I could have lunch with them after I worked in the morning? So there are many issues that one could look at. Can we look at bigger space so that people on wheelchairs can be on the road? Can we have more ramps? I think we are already beginning to explore all these possibilities, but I just want to have a platform where women can be thinkers and decision makers about the way cities are planned. We have taken this so much for granted that it's the affairs of men, that we have forgotten that we do have women architects, women urban planners, women consumers, and women at work. Can we rethink how the cities can help to facilitate a quality living so that they meet the interests and the needs of women?
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
When we return, Claire Chiang, chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program, speaks about her personal life lessons, from marriage to motherhood to lessons from the business world. Stay tuned for that. This edition of WOW, or Women of Worth, is brought to you by the Shirin Fozdar program of the Singapore Management University. More from chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program, Claire Chiang. My
Journey and After, your biography that sold out in 2011 after its very first run. The book was written in Chinese, but for our English-speaking audience, can you give us a sense of some of the key lessons? This is a big, big question because there's so many lessons: marriage and motherhood and community engagement and politics.
Right. So I think if there's any few things that I feel had been pertinent to my development, is that in my journey, doing is so important to me. I don't sit down and simply think about issues. I am a doer. So I'm a doer, organizer, planner, executioner. I do things. And that doing teaches me more about mistakes, about how to do it better. So I believe in the school of thought about doing and impacting on your cognitive development and in shaping my value systems, because I acquire through experimentation and learning to do it. I also learn to do the mistakes and then improving on myself. So doing it. But I don't believe in reaching what I think is perfect, then I do. No. Doing, performing, execution is all the continuous tense. And I believe in the engagement continually. So I'm hard on myself, but also set standards, and I like to be the best. And I always see that tomorrow will be another day to be better.
What have the key lessons of marriage been for you?
I always use the letter infinity, or the sign infinity, or the letter 8 inverted as symbolic. It's like two separate circles, but united with one thread of unison. You have to be separate spheres of development, but you're linked. And you try to find that linkage, and you're always moving in infinity in a very fluid manner, rolling along together, separate but together in infinity. I tell friends too, every 3 years I think you have to change in what you read and what you do, and so that there's always a freshness of thoughts and expressions. If you like red 3 years ago, maybe you should change to yellow. And if you like yellow, and maybe 3 years down, plan a road, you want to go to blue. You like skirts before, maybe you want to change to pants. You encourage diversity. And I think that openness to one another, that we are personas in development, and that we are not personas in perfection, helps to shape that the acceptance and the tolerance. Too often, I think young people today are unnecessary perfectionists, and they're very demanding on themselves and their partners, and they're not very forgiving, and they give up too easily. So the third thing that I think I am is that I don't quit. I make a loss, I have to try to recover the investment, because I already made a mistake and make a loss. This has become my investment to actually improve, to make sure that I make it back in whatever business initiative. The relationship may not work out. I have to analyze why, or whether it is a negotiation or whether it's a friendship. And if I concluded that this is really not aligned with my values, or it is negative to my development or to my self-esteem, I walk away. But I don't quit from my purpose immediately. I work till I have to give it up, and I eliminate.
How do you not let the role of motherhood eclipse your sense of who you are?
Oh, some call me a tiger mother, which I don't always agree, because in many aspects I think I'm also rather permissive. I think motherhood does not disallow you becoming any other. I think women, I've always aligned ourselves to a fantastic octopus. An octopus with 8 arms, able to multitask and do so many different things at one time. And mind you, octopus is one of the smartest species in the ocean. It is adaptable. It is agile. It can be on all shapes. It can fit into all shapes. Very adaptable. And it's got 2 covered teeth that can bite you should you ever want to hurt it. It has got what I call the covered leadership qualities. So in a way, I think a motherhood singlehood, womanhood. There's nothing that is so contrarian to each. The roles are not so contrarian to one another. I think we could be the way we are. We could be a very good mother if you don't want to be a mother, and some of women don't want to be mothers. It's okay. Be a very good person and be a very effective leader. Be responsible for who you are, what your values are, and use those values, leverage those values to do good to the world. So it's a strong I in service of the we. Once you make that leap, what status you are in doesn't really matter. If you're a mother, plus to you. If you're not a mother, be a good mother in quotes to other children. Your friends' children, your nieces, your nephews. So we can be the mothering type without being a mother, yeah?
You were a wonderful voice in Parliament. Do you think it is important that more women aspire to political participation? And what will it take here in Singapore?
We already have more women in Parliament than before, than our time. Yes, I think there should be more women making decisions on all aspects of life, whether at home or in schools or in the boardrooms or in the big house, Parliament. I think we should level up all women's participation in order to have the woman's voice in the decisions about the way society is. But whether the woman's voice is contextualized and what are some of the considerations you review to make your voice is an important factor. So you could be looking at a bigger issues. You look at women's issues, but you need to contextualize all your articulation. So that's the part about working in partnerships becomes important. That the more you engage with community, the more you engage with male arenas, the more you absorb different views so that you contextualize your articulation in the bigger picture so that you achieve certain harmony and certain gravitas to what you say. I think there's a need for stronger women's voices because we haven't been heard for far too long. As long as we proceed with achieving this considered voice, I do encourage women to take a stand. If they feel that politics is not the cup of tea, community is also a platform they can play in to build the confidence factor so that eventually they can enter the house. But if politics is not where they want, they can maybe do it through the pen if they are writers, through music if they are singers. But it's just the recognition and acceptance of yourself and who you are and your worth. And for this program, Women of Worth, it's women finding their worth. And once they do that, they blossom at anywhere.
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
Beautifully said. More from Claire Chiang after this. This edition of Wow, or Women of Worth, is brought to you by the Shirin Fozdar program of the Singapore Management University. I'm Michelle Martin. Welcome to the second edition of a 6-part special on the work of Shirin Fozdar. And we've heard some of the late social activist, Mrs. Fozdar, and about her work from in her own words earlier in the program. My thanks to the Oral History Centre of the National Archives of Singapore for those clips. You can hear more at nes.gov.sg/archives online. More now from the chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program, Claire Chiang, reflecting on lessons from her own life.
What are the key lessons in business for you? I know that you're taking Banyan Tree forward in community engagement. You're making great headway in China, for example. Can you share with us a little bit about lessons participating in the business world has brought to your life as a woman?
Because I do business development in China, I spend about 5 months a year in China traveling. I'm on the first line cities, I'm on the mountains, and where I feel I could sight the next banyan tree. I thought that in the Chinese culture, I would be a disadvantage. Actually, being a Singaporean is really helpful. Immediately, they brand you as someone who is professional, educated, honest, transparent, and capable. That the Singapore Inc. brand is so strong with any Singaporean. I hope you know it. And then being a woman is helpful, because the bulliness do not just come straight out. there is some respect for women and being a Singaporean woman. And being an older woman, is really helpful because I established the rank right away. A lot of the people I meet are younger. And so when I ask them to call me Kaka or Big Sister, immediately it put us in a cultural, relational context that breeds respect, deference. And of course, being a founder for Buy & Tree, whom they are connecting with, it's always the clinch, like, you know. So in my experience, it had been positive. And then being a woman to tell them I can't drink, I don't smoke. And we go straight to the task. It had been very effective, but it provided women, especially younger women, know their first principles.
Their first principles, you say?
The first principles to say that we are Singaporean, this is this job, and this is the deal, and I don't smoke, I don't drink, this is how I would like to work it. And you do not need to spend extra time to a lot of young people, Chinese and Singaporeans, drink.
That's the glue almost, right, for a business to happen.
I feel that if you cannot drink, don't get there. You don't need to. And if there are ways there are no other ways to get to a deal than the honest way. Because then you can sleep peacefully. So in a way, I feel that, you know, first principles in a person's life is so important that you know your bottom line. You know what are your first principles and what are your values that you abide with. And if the deal doesn't go through because you need to compromise, let it be. Walk away.
You have such a powerful sense of purpose. It just comes through in a conversation as well. What are the first principles in terms of your life purpose?
No one owes me a living. I am my own agency to buy and make sure I get that dress to go to the ball when I was at A level. I only have $20 a month to do everything I needed to do at our time. That was in the 60s, which is to get a box, to get anything we need to do for wearing. And I had the O-level ball to attend. So I remembered going to Chinatown and look for the wholesale market for the nicest looking, cheapest material. And went to look for the nicest auntie in the neighborhood who will sew up a dress for me to attend the ball. So I learned early, no one owes you a living. You are on your own and you're responsible for your own act. And if you excel, it's through your hard work. And if anybody offers help, it's a bonus. But the self-agency is yours to own. So that purposefulness comes, I think, from a lot of training since young. I had, at 21, when my mother felt that after university, after giving me the first degree, there's no more family support. I was on my own.
At what age?
21, after I got my first degree.
Okay.
Yeah. So after that, you really have to work yourself up to do anything you want. So along the way, therefore, we were taught, my family was taught the sense of purpose. No one owes you a living. You are the best, you do the best as you are. You are the capital that nature, mom, parents gave, and you improve on that to get your next goal. So this continuing having to do on my own, having purposefully targeting my actions, achieving stepwise manner all these 6 decades of my life, had made me to today, I suppose, that feeling that even the way I talk to my children, although they are more comfortable than I was, I still instill on them that, they have to be responsible for their own actions and they have to hold themselves accountable. So that's another important lesson for me and something that I will impart to the children and to all women, that other be responsible, be accountable.
We are having this conversation because of the memory of Shirin Fozdar. What do you want our listeners to remember when they hear her name, Shirin Fozdar?
A woman, small stature, but has a mindset that is universal and global. And I hope she inspires in all of us to become that unique persona that develops and reinforces that strong I, that we discover the best potential in ourselves, that we explore the possibilities in discovering the best in all others, and that in that togetherness that we build a better community and a brighter future. It is her not just her stamina, but her very strong spirit of fellowship with and in humanizing all around her that touched me. And although we are ages different and we are culturally different, I've seen her mother, grandmother, girlfriend, sisters, playmate, and intellectual partner all in one. So I feel there were such diverse fragments in this persona. There's so many goddesses in her, all in one, that is really encapsulating in my imagination. And I really feel that that's the deep possibilities a woman and men can become. That we haven't done enough to like ourselves and to be aware of ourselves, to dredge out all that potential in us. And we do that with the strong understanding and tolerance of the other. This is, I feel, the promise of the future, if we all learn that spirit.
Well, thank you for sharing your voice with our audience, Claire Chiang.
Thank you.
Two feminist heroes, both fearless and outspoken advocates of women's rights. We heard earlier from the late Mrs. Shirin Fozdar, and you just heard from chairperson of the Shirin Fozdar program, Claire Chiang. This edition of WOW, or Women of Worth, is brought to you by the Shirin Fozdar program of the Singapore Management University. You've been listening to WOW, or Women of Worth. I'm Michelle Martin.
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.